The Democratic Republic of Congo is once again grappling with a surge in violence, jeopardizing the fragile peace in the country's volatile east. The recent offensive by the M23 rebel group, accused of receiving support from neighboring Rwanda, has displaced thousands and raised alarms across the international community. The M23's capture of key towns, including the strategic city of Goma in 2012, serves as a stark reminder of the group's potential to destabilize the region. This latest escalation of violence comes after a period of relative calm and threatens to unravel years of diplomatic efforts. The resurgence of M23, known for its brutality against civilians, has exacerbated ethnic tensions and deepened the humanitarian crisis in the region. The DRC government, accusing Rwanda of backing the rebels, has severed diplomatic ties, further complicating the situation. As fighting intensifies, the international community is faced with the daunting task of quelling the violence and addressing the growing humanitarian needs. The conflict has displaced millions over the years, leaving many without access to basic necessities like food, water, and healthcare. The urgency of the situation demands a coordinated international response to alleviate the suffering of the Congolese people. The international community, led by the G7 and EU, has condemned the violence in the eastern DRC. They call for an immediate ceasefire and peaceful dialogue. The G7 and EU support the DRC's sovereignty and demand an end to external support for armed groups. They stress the need for humanitarian access and accountability for human rights violations. The G7 and EU urge negotiations under the Nairobi peace process for a lasting solution. The resurgence of violence in eastern DRC has triggered a humanitarian crisis of catastrophic proportions. Millions have been displaced from their homes, forced to live in overcrowded and unsanitary conditions in internally displaced persons camps. These camps, often lacking basic necessities, have become breeding grounds for disease and malnutrition, particularly among children and other vulnerable groups. The United Nations estimates that over 5.5 million people are internally displaced in the DRC, with the majority located in the conflict-ridden eastern provinces. The ongoing violence has disrupted agricultural activities, leading to widespread food insecurity and exacerbating the humanitarian crisis. The World Food Programme has warned that over 27 million people in the DRC are facing acute hunger, with the situation expected to deteriorate further without immediate intervention. The humanitarian crisis is further compounded by the lack of access to healthcare, clean water, and sanitation facilities. The breakdown of law and order has also led to an increase in gender-based violence, with women and girls disproportionately affected by the conflict. The international community is facing immense challenges in responding to the growing humanitarian needs, with funding shortfalls and insecurity hampering aid delivery efforts. Section 4. Urgent need for humanitarian access and protection. The escalating violence in eastern DRC has severely restricted humanitarian access to those in need. Aid agencies are facing growing challenges in reaching affected populations, with insecurity, bureaucratic hurdles, and a lack of infrastructure impeding their operations. The United Nations and other humanitarian organizations have repeatedly called for safe and unhindered access to deliver life-saving assistance to those displaced by the conflict. Ensuring the safety and security of humanitarian workers is paramount in this volatile environment. Aid workers have increasingly become targets of violence, with several incidents of attacks and abductions reported in recent months. The international community must prioritize the protection of humanitarian personnel and provide them with the necessary support to carry out their life-saving work. The protection of civilians must be at the forefront of all efforts to address the crisis in eastern DRC. All parties to the conflict must be held accountable for their actions and must respect international humanitarian law, which prohibits attacks on civilians and civilian infrastructure. The international community must use all available tools, including diplomacy, sanctions, and accountability mechanisms, to ensure the protection of civilians and prevent further human suffering. Section 5. The role of MONUSCO and the path to peace. MONUSCO, the UN mission in the DRC, aims to protect civilians and support peace. Despite challenges, including armed groups and vast terrain, MONUSCO strives to stabilize the region. The mission faces criticism for its effectiveness, and the UN is reviewing its mandate. a multifaceted approach is needed to address political, economic, and social issues. The international community must support the DRC for a stable future.